Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello learners, today we are going to discuss about the mass extinctions. This is the 8th module from the paper Evolutionary Biology, where we are going to discuss about the various extinction events that have taken place so far on our Earth. Particularly, we will talk about mass extinctions, but besides that, we'll also talk about background extinction events and the global extinction events. I'm Dr. Sudhir Verma, working as Assistant Professor in Department of Zoology, Deen Dayal Upadhyay College, University of Delhi. So, in this lecture, we will learn about what do we mean by extinction, specifically the biological extinction. Then, we will talk about the difference between different kinds of evolution, namely the background extinction, mass extinction events, and the global extinction. After that, we will focus on the mass extinction events that have taken place on Earth in the history. We will discuss about their causes and the effects that they have resulted in. Then we'll take KT extinction as an example because that is the recent most extinction event that has taken place on Earth. So let us start our discussion with what do we mean by the word extinction. In simple word, extinction is elimination of an entire species. Remember, we are talking about elimination of entire species throughout the earth. So, indirectly it means that there is no representative or any member of that species alive on the earth. Now, this extinction is certainly an extinction event of a species if the last existing member of that particular species dies. That means after that particular individual of that species, no more individual belonging to that species are alive on Earth. Now, besides this certain extinction events, there can be a sort of functional extinction as well. Now, what do we mean by functional extinction is that the members of that particular species are still alive, but these members are unable to reproduce. In other words, they are surviving, but they are unable to bring their offsprings or progenies. There can be various reasons for this inability to reproduce. It can be the poor health of the remaining individuals. It can be their age. They might be old age or beyond the reproductive age. Sparse distribution of the individuals or a sort of isolating mechanisms can be there. There might be lack of partners if they are sexually producing organisms, or there may be n number of other reasons because of which they are unable to bring their offsprings on Earth. The extinctions can be because of various reasons, but the two broad categories that are there are called as environmental factors. Now, these environmental factors can consist of any sort of natural disasters such as volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and so on. It can also be a habitat loss. For example, if a particular species resides in a particular habitat or it requires certain conditions, ecological conditions particularly, then if those conditions are lost, that particular species won't be surviving. There can be global changes which might be responsible for extinction of that species, or there can be other reasons like overexploitation. So these environmental factors are more of ecological or evolutionary factors. Now, besides that, there is another factor which might be responsible for extinction events, such as the biological factors. For example, you can consider the case that there is a scarcity of specific food that a particular species members require to survive upon. If that food is not there, the members won't be able to survive because of lack of the food supply. There can be other reasons, like there is species specific disease. So all the members of that species would die. Genetic inbreeding is another factor. Poor reproduction is yet another contributor to the extinction. There might be other ecological issues like predation, competition, or even the co-extinction. Means if two species are dependent on each other and somehow one gets extinct, the other is also bound to get extinct because its survival was based on that already extinct species. Now, we are concerned about extinct organisms and we need to be focused on the revival of these endangered species which are going to get extinct. For that, there is an organization called as International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. Now, IUCN has prepared a list of threatened species which is called as the Red List. All the organisms have been categorized or classified according to their status. Now, this status is with respect to their extinction or the possible threatening to their vulnerability towards extinction. Now, a member can be not evaluated status. That means that particular organism or species has not been evaluated as such. There can be another status that is called as data deficient. That means there is no sufficient data available to decide the status of that particular species. Then there is a category called least concern. That means the members of that species are in abundance, so there is least concern about their extinction. Then there can be near threatened, that means who are going to be threatened in the near future. Vulnerable, which are very much near to get endangered status. And then comes the red list of endangered species, where most of the focus lies upon, because these are the ones which are going towards extinction. So we need to take care of these species on priority. Then beyond that, there are categories like critically endangered, extinct in the wild. That means naturally these species members are not available. And finally, the status comes like extinct, which means that the members of that species are neither present naturally nor in the conserved stage or conserved habitats. So the extinction is something we should bother about. Now this extinction is of three types. The first extinction type is called as background extinction. As the name suggests, this is the extinction event which is already going on in the background. That means there is no sudden extinction event associated with it. It is a very steadily state going on process of evolution where normally species keep on getting extinct naturally. Another type is called as mass extinction events. Now these are very sudden extinction events which abruptly take place on Earth. And as the name suggests, these are called as mass extinction. That means the level of extinction or the loss of species is of much higher grade. And lastly, there is a category called global extinction. If you see in terms of level of extinction or in terms of loss of biodiversity, it increases from background to mass extinction and then to the global extinction. So global extinction is the most higher level of extinction where most of the species, or in fact all of the species, get extinct. Let us talk about the background extinction. Background extinction, as I just mentioned, it's an ongoing extinction of individual species. Remember, two things has to be focused upon. One, we are calling it as ongoing extinction. That means it is continuously going on in nature. This is not being occurred or it's not happening at an abrupt time. Secondly, it is of individual species. That means all the species are not going to extinct simultaneously. It is about a particular species. Then it occurs at a fairly steady rate over geological time. That means the constant rate of evolution or extinction is going on for a particular species in case of background extinction. It is a result of normal evolutionary process with limited species. As you can see here, this is a picture of a golden toad which was last seen in the year 1989. After that, nobody has seen this organism or species on Earth. So we believe that this particular species has got extinct from Earth. A symbol of dagger, just like this, if it is placed next to the name of the species or any taxon, it simply indicates that that particular species had got extinct. So, in order to show the status of a species or taxon as extinct, you need to put a dagger symbol after the name of that species. Now, there is something called background extinction rate, or we also call it as normal extinction rate. This is the standard rate of extinction in Earth's geological and biological history with no anthropogenic contribution. Now, what do we mean by this? It simply means the normal rate of extinction which is going on Earth in terms of geological and the biological history. But there is no involvement of humans as such. That means humans are not responsible for that. This extinction you can consider just like between two mass extinction events. If an extinction takes place, it is called as background extinction. Now, this background extinction can be measured in three different ways. For example, the number of species that normally go extinct over a given period of time. For example, let's say a particular bird species go extinct every estimated 400 years. So this is a normal extinction rate of that particular bird. Second method can be extinction rate in million species years, which means extinction of one species per year if there are million species present. The third method can be in giving species survival rates over time. For example, given normal extinction rate, a species typically exists for 5 to 100,000 years before going to extinct. So depending on the species, any of these methods can be used to calculate the normal or the background extinction rates. Now let us move ahead towards mass extinction. Unlike background extinction, where we were concerned about a particular species and it was a very steady rate of extinction under normal evolutionary process, in case of mass extinction, there is an elimination of more than 75% marine animal species. If it is below that, we do not consider it as a mass extinction event. It eliminates all the species in a region or ecosystem. Now this is very much unlike to the background extinction, because in background extinction we were talking about a particular species. Now we are talking about all the species residing in a particular region or ecosystem which get extinct. Jack Sepkoski and David M. Hope in the year 1982 identified 5 mass extinction events which have taken place in the history of Earth. Now these 5 major mass extinction events, which are also called as Big Five, are the ones which have resulted in more than 75% of all species lost in each case. These 5 big events are named as Ordovician-Silurian extinction events. Now all these extinction events have been named according to the geological time when they took place. So if they took place somewhere between Ordovician and Silurian, we call them as Ordovician-Silurian extinction event, also called as and-Ordovician or OS extinction. Second extinction event took place in the late Devonian geological time. So it is called as late Devonian extinction. Third one is called as Permian Triassic extinction event or the end Permian extinction event. Fourth one is called as Triassic Jurassic extinction event or the and Triassic extinction event. And the last one, which is most recent, is called as Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, or it is also called as and Cretaceous, KPG extinction, or formerly it was also called as KT extinction. We will talk about these 5 major mass extinction events in the coming slides, but before that, let's talk about the third type of extinction events which we pointed out as global extinction. Global extinction is a very large scale extinction event, and it eliminates most of the species on a continent or earth. So the level of extinction is much more even than the mass extinction events. For example, the snowball Earth. Snowball Earth is the event that has taken place on Earth. It was a set of around the events which took place at around 635 million years ago that resulted in the formation of almost a kilometer thick layer of snow all over the Earth. And this layer of snow that took place on Earth, it persisted for almost 10 million years. And during this time, mean temperature of Earth was around minus 40 degrees Celsius. It was a major holdback for evolution of all the animals in the late Precambrian period. So you can assume that what could have been the level of extinction during this period. The thick layer of snow which persisted for almost 10 million years could have resulted in the loss of most of the species on Earth during that time. And that is why we call this extinction event as the global extinction event. So let's quickly summarize these 3 types of extinction event which we have talked about. We started with background extinction, which means the ongoing normal extinction at steady rate over geological time due to normal evolutionary process with limited species being affected at a particular time. Here what you need to focus upon is the normal extinction occurring at steady rate. It is a normal evolutionary process. It affects a limited species at a particular time. Second one was the mass extinction, which eliminates more than 75% of species in a region or ecosystem, as it could have occurred after a volcanic eruption in a particular area. So it is not about one species, but more than 75% species being lost. And third, we talked about large scale extinction event, which we call as global extinction, that eliminates most of the species on the continent or in our case the earth. For example, the snowball Earth. Now, having this brief idea about what do we mean by extinction and what different kinds of extinction events are there, we will focus now upon the mass extinctions. And particularly, we will discuss this topic in 3 broad categories. First, we will talk about the 5 major mass extinction events which have taken place on our Earth so far in the history. Then we will talk about their causes, and lastly we will talk about their effects. So in these 3 subheads we will further discuss about the mass extinctions. Now just a sort of recapitulate, these are the 5 major mass extinction events which we just talked about: Ordovician Silurian extinction events, late Devonian, Permian Triassic, Triassic Jurassic, and lastly the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event. And as I just mentioned, these names are according to the geological time when this event took place. So here you can see the Phanerozoic biodiversity by fossil records that have been a sort of indication towards how these mass extinction events have caused the biodiversity loss. If you see, this is the current time, and here you can see the million years back, the history. Here, the area which you see in the gray is depicting all the genera present at that particular time on the earth. The green area shows the well-defined genera in that particular time. This line simply is a trend line to show the graph. The yellow colored triangle which you see here, they indicate the 5 major mass extinction events. So here you can also have an idea about the time point, that is in million years, when these major mass extinction event took place. Now besides that, as I said, mass extinction is not the only type of extinction events. There could have been other extinction events also, and these events which are minor in nature, which could have been background extinction, these have been depicted here with small blue colored triangles here. You can also appreciate the kind of loss, that means the kind of dip after each yellow colored triangle, that means the mass extinction. So this is the KT extinction which we are talking about, that is the most recent one that has taken place on Earth. Now, as I just mentioned, they have been named according to the geological time when they took place. So you can recapitulate the geological time scale which we took in our previous lectures. Here you can understand that the geological time has been classified in eon, eon into era, era into period, and then periods into epochs. So all these 5 extinction events that we are talking about have been in the Phanerozoic eon, and particularly 2 era which have seen these mass extinction events are Paleozoic and Mesozoic. In Paleozoic era, the first mass extinction event that took place was at the end of Ordovician period. The second one was at the end of Devonian period. Third one was at the end of Permian period. Fourth one at the end of Triassic, and the most recent event that took place was at the end of Cretaceous. And why we call them as Cretaceous Paleogene or Triassic Jurassic, because that was at the junction, almost at the junction of these two periods, and that is why they have been named like that. So these are the 5 major mass extinction events that we have been talking about. Now, besides these extinction periods, you can see in this table the approximate time in million years ago when this particular event took place. For example, end of Ordovician mass extinction event took place at around 440 million years ago. Devonian, at the end of Devonian period, the mass extinction took place that was at around 365 million years ago. At the end of Permian period, another mass extinction took place that was at around 245 million years ago. At the end of Triassic, 208 million years ago, and at the end of Cretaceous, at around 65 million years ago, the recent most mass extinction event took place. Here you can see the percentage of marine animal extinction, and as I just mentioned, any event is called as mass extinction only when it leads in the biodiversity loss of 75% or more, which you can see here in terms of numbers. Then why we are calling this end of Permian as the Great Dying? Because this is the most dangerous, you can say, kind of mass extinction event that has taken place on Earth, because it resulted in the loss of almost 96% of species which were present on Earth at that particular time. So seeing at the level of loss that it has incurred on Earth, it is called as the Great Dying Mass Extinction Event. Now, let us move ahead towards the causes of mass extinctions. Means, though we do not know the exact cause of any mass extinction event, but there can be a set of criteria or there can be a set of predictions based on which we can tell that probably these have been the causes of mass extinction. Any good proposal or theory for a particular mass extinction to be classified as the reason or the cause of that mass extinction should justify some points. And these points are: first, it should explain all the losses, not just focus on a few groups. For example, if we say a particular mass extinction event resulted in the loss of dinosaurs, so it should not only talk about the dinosaurs. It should talk about, or it should explain, all the losses in terms of biodiversity along with the dinosaurs. So the overall biodiversity loss. Secondly, it should explain why particular groups of organisms died out, whereas some others could survive that particular mass extinction event. So if you are predicting or proposing a particular cause for a mass extinction event, you should have justifiable answer to tell that why these organisms only died whereas others could survive. Third is called as the mechanisms which are strong enough to cause a mass extinction but not a total extinction. Lastly, it should be based on events or processes that can be shown to have happened, not just inferred from the extinction. So you should have some evidence to show that yes, this particular event took place on Earth because of which the mass extinction took place. It should not be simply inferred from the extinction event as such. Now, for the cause of mass extinction events, there have been a model as given by Ahrens and West in the year 2006, and this model is called as Press and Pearls model. According to this, the mass extinction generally requires two types of causes. The first cause is a long-term pressure on the ecosystem, which we call as the press. And then there is a sudden catastrophic event, which is called as pearls, towards the end of the period of pressure. It is just like a particular organism is being suppressed for a long time, and suddenly there is a pulse event, and all the agony that he has, it comes out in terms of anger. So it is just like press for a long time and then a sudden catastrophic pulse, then the mass extinction to take place. Their statistical analysis of marine extinction rates throughout the Phanerozoic suggested that neither long-term pressure alone nor a catastrophic event alone was sufficient to cause a significant increase in the extinction rate. So using statistical methods, they have proved that none of these methods, like the press method or the pulse method, could result in these kind of extinction rates. It requires both the events, that is the press as well as the pulse event, in order to cause a mass extinction event.